What's going on, guys? It's New York Prepper here, and welcome to another video in the neighborhood security series. And I'm going to talk about strategies and how to set up a security plan for your neighborhood. So sit back and relax and enjoy the video. And you may not see my face the whole time, and that's just the way I have the camera set up. Because I have to have the camera facing the board here. So you may not see my face the whole time. I apologize for that. But, I'm going to have some good ideas for you guys and some good content. So sit back and relax and enjoy the show, all right? So we already talked about neighborhood security in part 1, what it is and why you want to have neighborhood security. I discussed in detail why you need neighborhood security and what it is. And I talked about SHTF and what the threats are. All right. So now that we know what the threats are, which are people, we know that people are the main threat, occasionally a wild animal. We talked about SHTF, which is a total collapse of society or a temporary collapse. So we could have, bad people that we have to deal with because the rule of law collapsed. There's no law enforcement. There's no criminal justice. It's basically every man for himself. All right. So we talked about that in the first part. And I mentioned why you want to have neighborhood security. I talked about the herd principle and how buffalo herds are safer than individual buffalo by themselves. Otherwise the lions would eat the buffalo if they were by themselves. So they herd together. That's why you want to have neighborhood security and not by yourself. However, if you do have to secure your home by yourself, this is still going to have some benefit to you. So don't think that this is only for neighborhoods and groups and communities and things like that, prepping communities and stuff like that. This can also be used for individuals, and if you're going to try to protect your property by yourself and protect your home and your family, this can also have some benefit to you because I'm going to go over some basic principles of security, and so it'll get your brain working a little bit and thinking. So here we're just going to talk about general strategies or general tactics. These aren't going to be very specific. I can do other videos about specific tactics, and I'll do that. I'll do like specific tactics on creating small units and how to create like a small fire team and stuff like that. But in this video, I'm not going to talk about different formations like a wedge formation versus a column or, versus a skirmish line. I'm not going to get into that in this video, or fields of fire and stuff like that. I'm not covering that here, okay? So if that's what you guys are looking for, you're not going to find that in this video. That'll be in a separate video. It's too much to do in one video, all right? So those kinds of tactics are more at a lower level. This is at a higher level. This is more of a general strategy. So, when you have your neighborhood, you have to have, you're not just going to have one or two people patrolling the perimeter. That's just not enough, okay? You need to have different groups and different, trying to find what the word is for it, different units and different people, different elements, okay? You want to have different elements that are going to be helping with your security, all right? You're not just going to have one patrol that constantly patrols the perimeter. You're going to have multiple, different elements that are working together, and you're going to have a layered defense, all right? It's called layered defense or defense in depth. And what that means is you want to have multiple layers. So the word is called defense in depth, okay? Defense in depth, all right? This is probably the most critical concept for this video, defense in depth, okay? Remember this word, all right? And that also means layered security, okay? Layered security, all right? So these two words basically mean the same thing, okay? Let me just, I'm getting a glare again. Hold on, guys. I'm getting a glare here. Stand by. All right, now it should be better. All right, so layered security and defense in depth are pretty much the same thing, okay? Sorry about that. Okay, there we go. All right, so these are the same, all right? And what these are is just security can't just be one thing, all right? You know, let's just use an example for like a fence or something, right? If you, let's say, have a building in a high crime area, you know, let's say you have a diamond store, all right, in a high crime area, all right? So here we'll call this NY Preppers Diamonds, all right? And I sell diamonds, and it's in a really bad location, okay? NY Preppers Diamonds, all right? Not that I ever wanted to sell diamonds, but, you know, all right? So NY Prepper Diamonds. Let's say this is in Harlem or the Bronx, okay, or some other area that's known to have high crime. You know, I'm not just going to only lock my door, okay? You know, because if somebody breaks that lock, they're going to get in and they're going to take all the diamonds, right? So I need to have multiple layers, you know. So in this situation, use your imagination and you know, think about different layers of security. So, you know, you have door locks, security cameras, okay? Security cameras, CCTV. You may have, you know, a fence on the outside, fencing, okay? Fencing. Lighting. Lighting is another one, okay? Lighting. And then there's something called CP-TED. All right, CP-TED. And CP-TED just means crime prevention through environmental design. All right, that's what CP-TED means. Let me just make that brighter. So these are some layers, all right? And the reason why you have layers, and then also, let's say you have a dog, okay? You have a guard dog. You have security guards, okay? Look at how many layers of security there are here, all right? We have security guards, we have door locks, we have cameras, fencing, lighting, CP-TED, dog, okay? Look at how many layers there are here, all right? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 layers of security here. Very simple layers, you know, and that's going to protect my diamonds from getting stolen or from my clerks to get robbed and shot at gunpoint, you know, robbed at gunpoint and shot. All these layers are going to protect the diamonds inside. So if I took away these layers, let's say I only had a security guard, all right, because now we're thinking about neighborhood security in SHTF. Let's say I took all these other layers and all I had was my security guards, all right? What happens if the security guard falls asleep while he's supposed to be watching? All right, let's say you have a nighttime security guard watching the diamond store, and he's parked across the street in his car, and he's watching the diamond store, and he's doing a midnight shift, and he falls asleep. All right, and there's no door locks, there's no cameras, no fencing, no lighting, no environmental protection, and no dog. Somebody's just going to walk right in and take everything out, okay? So you want to have multiple layers of security. You don't just have one layer, all right? You need to have multiple layers of security. That's absolutely an essential concept, okay? Essential. And it's not just for SHTF security. You can use this for rule of law security, all right? When you're designing the security of your home, all right, you don't just put in a security system. I also forgot security system too. Security, let's see, motion sensors, all right, motion sensors. That's another one, and I'm just giving some examples here. So the more layers that you have, the better, all right? Because a bad guy is going to have to penetrate all of these different layers here, all right? So let's say he gets past the security guard, right? He gets past the security guard who fell asleep, and now there's a door lock here, all right? Let's say he breaks the door lock, so he gets, let's just start crossing it off the list here, all right? So he, security guard gets, he falls asleep or whatever, door locks get penetrated, all right? He goes in, the next thing is motion sensors, right? The motion sensors are going to catch him trying to get in, and the alarm is going to go off, all right? So that's how these layers work, okay? And another thing is you may also have fencing on the outside too. You may have another layer of fencing, and then you're going to have lighting on the outside here on all the corners of the building, and so lighting is another thing. On top of that, you're going to have cameras, okay? You're going to have cameras watching all corners of the building. So this presents a big challenge for any bad guy trying to get into this diamond store. So remember layers of security. You don't want to just have one layer. And a lot of guys in the prepping community who never worked security, I've worked security, all right? So I know these principles. And, physical security, I've done physical security, different types of security jobs. So I'm familiar with this, okay? But a lot of preppers that have never worked security, and they're not really familiar with these concepts. They think that security means, a couple of guys walking around the perimeter of the neighborhood, and that's good enough, But what if your guys are not there when they need to be, all right? Like, for example, this security guard, all right? What happens if your guys that are supposed to be patrolling your neighborhood, or if you're supposed to be patrolling your property, if we're talking about an individual, what happens if you are not there when you need to be, all right? It's impossible for somebody to be everywhere constantly, all right? It's impossible. Patrols are not a guarantee, all right? You can patrol your neighborhood. You could even have static positions, overwatch. You could have, guard towers around your neighborhood. And that still doesn't guarantee that somebody's not going to penetrate, all right? Because you're relying on humans, all right? And humans are not constant. We need to take breaks. We need to go to sleep. We need to use the bathroom. We have to, take breaks for food. So that's something you need to think about. And they can also be taken out. A security guard can be taken out. So you need to make sure you have multiple layers of security, all right? If you have a property, if you own a house or a farm or property, bug out land, you have to make sure that you have good layers of security on your property, all right? Fencing, lighting, dogs, motion sensors, alarm, security cameras, and you're going to be your own security guard, all right? CPTED, crime prevention through environmental design. All right, what does that mean? That means that you can use the environment to, you can prevent crime, which in our case is, bad guys, after SHTF, or it could even be rule of law, but you can prevent crime just by the environmental design, all right? What does that mean? That means that, think about like a very bushy, wooded area, okay? A lot of people in Central Park, I don't know if it still happens now, but back in the day when I was a kid, a lot of people got attacked in Central Park and raped and stuff like that because Central Park is in New York City. And because Central Park is very wooded and there's a lot of brush and bushes, a lot of bad guys would hide in the bushes and jump people, all right? So if you have CPTED, what you can do is you can cut those bushes away so it removes that ability for somebody to hide there and jump you. So CPTED, you can research that a little more. I'm not going to get much more into it, but you can use your environment to your advantage to protect your facility or protect your homestead, protect your bug out location, protect your home and your neighborhood, okay? you know, even if you have like for example, if you have a house that's on a very remote area on the top of a hill and it's very steep, you know, that's crime prevention through environmental design, because you're on the top of a hill and nobody wants to climb up there to get to you. All right, so it's a very good principle. So I would recommend you guys research that, but look into having multiple layers for your homestead or your bug out location, whatever, your farm, your house. You want to have these multiple layers, all right? And transitioning from layers, we're going to talk now about the whole neighborhood and how the entire neighborhood has to have layers. You know, you can't just have one patrol. You need to have multiple elements, all right? So I'm just going to redraw, you know, I'm going to draw a new diagram here for you guys so you can visualize what I'm trying to say. All right, so here we go. I'm going to draw you guys a basic, you know, neighborhood, and this is just all conceptual. It's all stuff that, you know, I'm trying to visualize, get you guys to visualize. All right, so here's our neighborhood, you know, and it doesn't have to look just like this. I'm just using this as an example. All right, so here's your little neighborhood somewhere. You have your road in the middle. Okay, these are your houses on the side. All right. So this is your neighborhood. So obviously you want to protect the perimeter, right? So you're going to have, you know, patrols. This is your perimeter. You know, let's say this is where more or less your neighborhood kind of ends. And over here, maybe some forests or the next neighborhood or the next roadway or whatever. So this is kind of the imaginary boundary of your neighborhood. Either because of the environment or because of land. You know, let's say your neighbor's properties end over here and this is the next neighborhood, or whatever the situation is. This is your boundary, all right? Either invisible or a hard, solid boundary, meaning, you know, the property ends there and there's maybe state property here or whatever. And if we're talking about SHTF, property doesn't really matter at that point, because property is whatever you can control with your neighborhood. So if there's other property here and it doesn't belong to you guys, you could still theoretically occupy it and control it if it gives you a strategic advantage over any bad guys that may be coming in. So, you know, even if, let's say, these houses here, their property ends over here, you know, it may be a tactical advantage for you to occupy all the way out here, okay, outside past the boundary of the neighborhood, and occupy some positions on the outside. So it gives you a little bit of a buffer. If there's any bad guys coming in, it gives you a buffer, you know, and you can have some sentries and stuff on the outside, all right? So, but remember the layered security concept, and that's what I'm going to talk about now. So, and I'm going to get into the specifics of that. So you have your neighborhood, you have your invisible boundary. So let's say you have a patrol, all right, marked by the X, all right, and X is going to represent a patrol. Anytime you see me draw an X, that represents a patrol, all right. Whoops, just dropped my pen here. All right, so here we have our invisible boundary. Here's one of our patrols, all right. That is our security patrol here. And their job is to patrol this you know, main perimeter here, right around these homes, okay? So these homes, you know, you have your vulnerable people in here. You may have women, children, elderly people, sick people. You may have your resources in here, you know, your ammo, your weapons, your food, your water, other, you know, communications equipment. All your equipment is going to be inside of this, you know, area here. So you want to protect it, right? Now, so here you have your patrol that's going to be patrolling the neighborhood, right? So remember layered security, how I talked about having layers. So what happens if you have a patrol? You know, let's say you have 3 or 4 guys here, and they patrol the perimeter, okay? And what happens if you have a sniper that takes them out? okay? So as they're patrolling, I hope you guys can see that. Let me see if I have to get a little bit closer here. Hold on. All right, so let's say you have your patrol, and they're doing their patrol. They're patrolling the vulnerable people in here and the resources. They're patrolling, and all of a sudden, boom, they get ambushed, all right? A sniper takes them out, or there's some type of an ambush set up here by a group of bad guys, or a distant neighborhood that may want your resources from you, your food, your water, your ammo. They may want to have their way with the women in here and rape and stuff like that. They may want to round people up for slave labor. So let's say there's a distant neighborhood, or it could just be a group of bad guys, random bad guys that are going to go around after an SHTF to take advantage of the situation and, loot and pillage and steal and rob and rape and murder and, get revenge on people. They're going to take advantage of an SHTF, and they're going to go after neighborhoods like this, because neighborhoods like this is where people have money and they have a lot of resources. They have valuable things. They're not going to go into a crime-infested area to try to steal and loot, because they know there's not much there except for crack houses, right? So they're probably going to come to your neighborhood, all right? So, and again, you could also have a distant neighborhood that may want to try to steal your resources. If we're talking about SHTF, a post-SHTF situation, let's say you have neighborhood A, this is your neighborhood. You have neighborhood B, which could be, a couple of miles down the road. They run out of food, or they run out of gas or fuel, heating fuel, firewood, any other type of resources, physical, tangible resources. They may try to come and steal it from you, okay? So you have to guard against that, and then you also have to guard against the random criminal groups and raiders and marauders, as they call them, okay? Marauders. So let's say you have your patrol here, and they're patrolling the outside of the houses, because that's what common sense tells you, that you want to patrol the outside of the houses here, right? So let me see if I have to move this a little bit closer there. Okay, there we go. What happens if this patrol gets taken out? All right, this is your only layer of security. So now this patrol gets taken out, and they can, this invisible boundary is gone. This invisible boundary is now gone. It's taken away. This layer here is taken away because of the ambush on the patrol. So now it's wide open. All right, now there's no layer anymore. So now the bad guys can come in and have their way, do whatever they want. All right. So, you got to have multiple layers, all right? And that's what I'm going to talk about now. So let me just do that. Let me just redraw this a little bit. So here's your neighborhood, right? So you're going to still have your immediate patrol on the outside here, okay? You're still going to have that patrol, all right? That patrol's still going to be there. So, here's the patrol, right? But like I said, you may want to occupy some distance around your neighborhood or your community, just to give you a little bit of a buffer, and you want to control that terrain, okay? So I'm going to mark that with dots here, okay? So these dots represent the some of the outlying areas around your area, your community, that you're going to want to occupy, all right? Just like a buffer, okay? Because if there's bad guys coming here from the outside, from different directions, remember, they can come from any direction. They may not come right down the main road. They could come in the main road. They can come from anywhere, okay? So having this buffer here is going to protect your neighborhood, all right? And it's going to give you a tactical advantage, and it'll slow down any kind of assault or invasion or whatever. So you want to occupy that buffer, and you're gonna have your immediate security patrols around your neighborhood, and then you're gonna have patrols on the outskirts. Okay, so these patrols here, these little X's, represent the patrols that patrol the outer areas. Okay, and they're gonna hold that terrain and occupy it to make sure that no bad guys come in and set up positions in this buffer zone. Okay, so you're going to want to make sure that you patrol the buffer zone as well. All right, so here's our regular patrol. So we're going to have another patrol, and this buffer, it really depends on, it could be, this buffer could be 100 yards, or it could be a mile, or even 2 miles or 5 miles. It really depends on where you live and what your terrain is like. If you live in a suburban area, it's going to be hard for you to control a lot of terrain because it's, so many different avenues of approach and there's different people. But if you're in more of like a open area in Kansas or something, and you have wide open visibility here, then you're going to want to control more, because then you can watch it easier and you can prevent snipers and things like that. But you're going to want to occupy this buffer zone and patrol it. All right, make sure that somebody doesn't come here, the bad guy's going to represent a circle. All right, you don't want a bad guy to come in here, from different areas, and you don't want them to patrol the outside. All right, you see the circles? You don't want these bad guys to come in and be right on the outside of your neighborhood where your internal patrols are. All right, because what can happen is there can be a sniper here. All right, one of these circles could be a sniper. They could be reconnaissance, and they could be an ambush element. All right, they could try to ambush this patrol here, just like I mentioned in the previous example, and take it out. Or they may try to have a sniper come in and shoot into the buildings here where there's people inside. All right. And if they have a sniper rifle that's anti-material, they can do some serious damage to your vehicles and any kind of physical plant. Let's say you have a generator or a fuel tank or some kind of a storage area or critical machinery. They can use the sniper rifle to target machinery that you have inside of your, neighborhood, and they can destroy it. They can shoot at transformers and take your power out. All kinds of things, all right? So you want to have a separate patrol that's going to patrol this buffer area to look out for any kind of enemy, elements that are going to try to set up in just outside of the neighborhood, all right? And, also recons, the enemy may have a recon platoon here, and they're going to try to gather information on your neighborhood and find out what your security looks like, what kind of resources you may have, get a layout of the terrain and the buildings. So you want to make sure that you're patrolling this buffer zone and looking out for snipers, for recon, for ambushes, for any other type of unusual situations. You're going to have separate patrols that are going to hold this terrain here, okay, this buffer. All right, so I'm just going to write buffer. All right, buffer. And then also what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to set up sentries, okay? And the sentries are going to be a little bit further out from the buffer zone, all right? It's going to basically be like an outpost, all right? The outpost is going to be further out from the buffer zone. So the outpost is going to be over here. And you may want to have multiple outposts at different locations, So, north, south, east, west, all directions that you think the enemy would come. All right, so here's the outposts. Let me just eliminate some of these arrows here because it's getting a little bit hard to focus. Too much stuff going on. So you're going to want to have outposts here, all right? Sentries. A sentry could literally just be one guy, all right? One guy further out from the buffer zone. And what he's doing is he's watching for any enemy movements or any indication of an impending invasion He's looking out for any patrols, enemy patrols. He's looking out for possible raids that are about to happen. The sentries are going to catch anybody that's trying to move into the buffer zone. So if there's an enemy group coming in, and they're approaching the buffer zone here, these sentries are going to watch and they're going to observe what's going on, okay? And they're going to be able to report back to HQ inside of the neighborhood. And HQ is going to then tell these patrols out here by the buffer that there's a group of whoever coming in, okay? And to set up, let's say these sentries, they see that these these guys are coming in from the south. So the HQ at this point can radio to your security here on the buffer to maneuver towards the bad guys and prevent them from getting into the buffer, or just to observe and see what they do. All right, it's not always going to be a firefight. Maybe they're just going to observe them, and see what are they. Maybe they're not enemies. Maybe they're friendlies. Maybe they're just a recon platoon. Who knows? Maybe there's more value in capturing the enemy than killing them, okay? But that's, a whole, you could spend the whole day talking about that. So you're going to want your sentries, your buffer zone, with a patrol on the buffer zone, and then you're going to want to have an immediate patrol just on the outside of your neighborhood, all right? And the sentries are going to ideally be positioned all around. So that's what I talk about with layered security, all right? Because you want to have different layers, because if one guy, like I said, if they destroy this internal security patrol here, then that's a problem. And also, you're also going to have different types of enemies. You're not just going to have an overt enemy. You're going to have covert enemies as well. Covert enemies are going to be infiltrators, okay? Infiltrators meaning you may have a bad guy that tries to join your neighborhood or your group, or they may be a relative of somebody in the neighborhood, and they're going to try to gather information on your neighborhood and give it out to other people so that they can help in an attack or something like that. So think about like spies, basically, spies. So you could have spies embedded into your neighborhood. So you have to also deal with the covert threats as well, not just the overt, assaults and things like that. So that's another thing you need to think about. And I mean, the best way to deal with that is to vet everybody that nobody's allowed into the neighborhood, unless they're, trusted. Okay. Let's see what else. So the next thing is going to be recon patrols and sniper teams. All right. In addition to your sentries, you're going to want to have maybe a sniper embedded somewhere outside of your neighborhood. You're going to want to have a sniper overwatching your neighborhood, okay, and basically acting as a defensive overwatch. And he could also act as a sentry as well. He can act as a sentry because snipers are good at stealth and hiding. So he can hide himself, and if there's a patrol coming in, he can report back and notify that there's somebody coming in. And if he wants to, he can take action against that patrol as a sniper, and that'll soften up that patrol in time for the main forces to react and destroy the force here, okay? So, you may want to embed a sniper, a defensive sniper. Also, he can act as a counter sniper as well. If the bad guys try to set up a sniper somewhere out here, this circle, if they try to set up a sniper up here, and he could observe the area, and if he sees that there's a sniper set up here, he can take that sniper out, okay, before the sniper turns into a real threat. All right? Another thing you can do is you can set up the sniper to overwatch avenues of approach. So let's say you have your roadway here, All right, let me just clear this out. Let's say you have like a road that comes into your neighborhood, you know, down here. Okay, this is a road. You know what you could do is you could set up a sniper further out. Okay, so let's say this is your buffer zone. Your buffer zone could be half a mile. All right, this could be maybe half a mile, and your sentries may be another mile out, and then your sniper could even be 2, 3, 4, 5 miles out. All right, so you're gonna have a long-range sniper, I guess you could say. He's gonna be further out from the neighborhood, and he's gonna be watching for anybody coming into the neighborhood, maybe a convoy of bad guys or something suspicious going on, and he can radio back to the HQ and let you guys know that there's a group of bad guys coming in. And obviously, if you're using radios, you need to use call signs, and you need to use, you know, you can't just speak in normal English, because the bad guys could be listening. Okay, so you may want to have your sniper further out. Like I said, you want to maybe position a sniper further out, which would be great. It's not mandatory, but it would be great because it would give an advanced warning of anybody coming, and he could also take action. You know, if he sees a group of bad guys coming up the road and they're armed, you know, he could take action on them, all right? But that's kind of questionable in terms of, because you don't know if somebody's a bad guy or not. Just because they're carrying a weapon doesn't mean that they're a bad guy. So, but, you know, having a defensive sniper is huge, all right? A counter sniper somewhere on the outside of the buffer, you know, and he's going to be watching. He's going to be just like a sentry. You know, he's going to be just like a sentry. He's going to be watching, and if there's any snipers that try to position themselves, he can take them out. If there's any recon patrols, enemy recon patrols, he can take them out. If there's any incoming, you know, assault forces, he can take them out. He can soften them up before the main force responds. So it's good to have a defensive sniper somewhere on the outside of your community, on the outside of the buffer zone. The final thing I'm going to talk about is recon. You know, you're going to want to have recon patrols, and the recon patrols are going to be outside of the buffer, and they're going to be doing all kinds of things. You know, first of all, they're going to be reconning the terrain. They're going to see what the terrain looks like. They're going to be gathering various kinds of intelligence on possible enemy movements, different types of things that are going on. You know, you definitely want to have a reconnaissance team. Okay, reconnaissance ties into security. All right, security is not just having a patrol and infantry guys and stuff like that. You're going to want to have like a recon group. You know, it may only be like 2 or 3 guys or 1 guy, and he's going to go out and check out what's going on around the area, okay? And he could go up to 5, 10, 15, 20 miles. It really depends on what the mission is and what you guys are trying to accomplish. But you want to have some kind of recon, all right? You want to gather information on what's going on, you know, outside of your buffer, your neighborhood, you know? You want to know what's going on outside. Is there another neighborhood next door? And are they friendly or are they hostile, you know? And the Recon Patrol is going to be able to watch those other neighborhoods and see what they're up to and determine, you know, what kind of resources they have. Are they friendly? Are they hostile? You know, things like that. They can look for possible enemy movements coming to your neighborhood. So a Recon Patrol is absolutely essential, all right? You definitely want to have a recon patrol of some kind, all right, to monitor what's going on outside of your neighborhood, all right? You know, and like I said, the distance doesn't matter. It really depends on what you're trying to accomplish, what kind of information you're trying to get. But a recon patrol is absolutely essential. You definitely want to be doing regular recon patrols. So, and that ties into your security. So I think I pretty much covered everything. So remember, guys, layered security. You don't want to just have one layer. And, you know, for the neighborhoods, you want to have a buffer zone on the outside, you know, occupy terrain that's on the outside of your immediate neighborhood. and you know, occupy it and control it, because if there's any bad guys that try to come in to your neighborhood, you're going to have a buffer. Set up sentries, you know, on the outside of your occupied terrain to guard for anybody coming in. Set up a defensive sniper to watch for any snipers that are trying to set up, and have your recon patrols. All right. Another thing too is you're going to also want to, inside of your neighborhood, inside of the homes, you're going to want to have armed people inside of each home. Okay. And these people are going to typically be CQB guys. They're going to be, their main job is to protect the building that they're in. All right, that's their main job. They're going to be guarding the actual buildings. All right, because what happens is if somebody comes in from the outside and takes out your patrols, they take out all your patrols on the outside, all your perimeter patrols, your sentries, your perimeter here. Your sniper, everybody's gone. They're wiped out. Now, if you don't have anybody inside of your neighborhood protecting the neighborhood itself, they're going to be wide open. All right. So let's just give you an example. Let's say if we take away the sentries. Let's take away all the sentries. They're all gone. They got wiped out. Let's say that the perimeter, the internal perimeter and the external buffer guys are gone. They're eliminated. All right. So now it's wide open here. All right. These bad guys are going to come in and they're going to be able to do whatever they want. Okay. So you need to also have a reserve force inside of your community, embedded in these homes. Okay. And in these buildings, however you have it set up. You're going to want to have somebody on the inside. You don't want to have all your forces on the outside, because if they get taken out, they're done and it's wide open. So you want to have some guys that are embedded on the inside to protect the neighborhood, you know. And these can be, you know, you could have some neighbors of yours that are just good shooters, and they could be protecting their individual families, you know. But you definitely want to have somebody that's armed inside of these neighborhoods, inside of these houses here, just in case all of your perimeter security is wiped out. All right. So that's pretty much it, guys. In the next video, I'm going to discuss more specifics, and I'm going to do videos on more specific tactics and things like that. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps. Prepare, practice, and persevere.